Nothing about this place wants you here. Deep in the foothills of the Himalayas, the temperature can swing from below freezing to a blistering 122 degrees Fahrenheit. Jagged cliffs drop away into canyons hundreds of feet deep. There are no roads, no towns, no way in except by foot or by boat down a churning river. And somewhere in the middle of all that, India decided to build a bridge. Not just any bridge, a record-breaking one. Steel towers rising from canyon walls, carrying trains over one of the most violent landscapes on Earth. Getting a single person up here was hard enough. Getting 30,000 tons of steel up here should have been impossible. This is the story of the Chenab Bridge. To understand why anyone would attempt this, you need to understand the problem it solves. Kashmir Valley sits on one side of these mountains. The rest of India sits on the other. For decades, one single road connected them, and every winter, snow shut it down. So India decided to build a railway straight through the mountains instead. All told, the project includes 943 bridges and 36 tunnels, one of them stretching 7 miles underground. The price tag comes in around $5 billion. For comparison, that's roughly what it cost New York City to build just 2 miles of subway tunnel under 2nd Avenue. But this isn't just a construction story. Kashmir is one of the most heavily contested regions on the planet, split between India and Pakistan, both of whom claim it. Supporters call this railway a lifeline. Critics call it something else entirely. Either way, the trains kept coming, and so did the bridge. David McKenzie has worked on this bridge since 2004. He's the senior technical director for the firm behind it. When he describes his first trip to the site, it doesn't sound like a construction project. It sounds like an expedition. His team rode donkeys up the mountain paths. On the way back down, they took a boat instead because somehow, floating down a wild river was the faster option. Before a single piece of steel could go up, crews had to carve 26 miles of road into the mountainside, clinging to cliff edges most drivers would refuse to drive. And even then, there was no way to truck and finish parts. So the steel arrived flat, cut, drilled, and assembled entirely on site, piece by piece, like the world's heaviest flat-pack furniture kit. Only once all of that was solved could the real challenge begin. Building up. Here's something most people don't expect about mountains. They don't block wind. They weaponize it. Squeeze air through a narrow canyon and it speeds up. Speed it up enough and the pressure drops, creating violent, unpredictable gusts. Engineers call it the Venturi effect. In this canyon, it produces winds up to 165 miles per hour. Now picture trying to lift and align massive steel beams hundreds of feet in the air, in gusts strong enough to flip a truck. Standard wind tunnel testing wouldn't cut it here, so engineers built something more elaborate. A full computer model of the surrounding terrain, hills, valleys, everything, to calculate exactly how much the canyon itself would accelerate the wind. The answer was startling. In some spots, wind speeds jumped by 20% just from the shape of the land. A 110 mile per hour gust could become 130. That single number reshaped how every piece of steel would need to be secured. And the wind wasn't even the biggest problem. The Himalayas are young. Geologically speaking, they're still growing, still shifting, forced upward by 2 tectonic plates that are still colliding today. That means the rock here isn't solid bedrock. It's fractured, unstable, and prone to crumbling. A canyon, by nature, forms a V shape. Anchor a bridge tower to one sloped, unstable wall of that V, and gravity has other ideas. The tower wants to slide. So engineers designed around the problem instead of fighting it. Rather than building straight towers, they built an arch, rising from both sides of the canyon at once, meeting in the middle. As the two halves lock together, they push against each other, driving their weight down and into the mountain itself, rather than sideways into loose rock. It's a structure that uses the canyon's own geometry to hold itself up. To assemble that arch, crews built what's essentially an aerial conveyor belt, towers on either side of the canyon, connected by cables, capable of winching steel pieces across open air. Each half of the arch grew from the bottom up, anchored by cables locked directly into the rock, holding everything in place above a drop of nearly 1,300 feet to the river below. One section at a time, the two sides crept toward each other across the canyon until they finally met in the middle. And just like that, an arch existed where there had only been open air. But an arch alone doesn't carry a train. Once the towers were finished, crews began building the flat top deck where the trains would actually ride on, but there was no way to lower it in from above, so they used something called launching. One segment of deck gets built, then pushed slightly forward. Another segment gets built behind it and pushed forward again. Piece by piece, the deck extends further out over the canyon, suspended by nothing but the strength of what's already been built behind it, until both sides finally connect in the middle. Here's the part that surprises people. This bridge sits in an active earthquake zone, yet its enormous size actually works in its favor. When the ground shakes, it moves by a roughly fixed amount, regardless of the structure sitting on top of it. Stretch a bridge across a longer span, and that same shake becomes a smaller fraction of the whole. In other words, being massive doesn't make this bridge more vulnerable to earthquakes. It makes it less. You'd think after conquering wind, unstable rock, and earthquakes, the sun would be the least of anyone's worries. You'd be wrong. Remember that temperature swing from freezing to 122 degrees? In a canyon, sunlight doesn't hit the whole bridge evenly. One section can bake in direct sun, while another sits in shadow, creating uneven heating across the same structure. Steel expands when it heats and contracts when it cools, and that constant flexing is dangerous for a bridge carrying trains. The solution was surprisingly elegant. The rails themselves are pre-stressed, pulled taut under tension for stability. But instead of bolting them rigidly to the bridge, engineers left them able to slide within their fixings. As the bridge shifts with changing temperatures, the rails simply move with it. Sometimes the strongest engineering solution isn't rigidity, it's controlled flexibility. Designed by engineers at WSP in Finland, the finished arch now rises above the Chenab River, steel blending into the mountain rock behind it. Passengers crossing it get some of the most dramatic views of any railway on Earth. The line officially opened last summer. It's just one part of a much larger rail network, but it might be the most extraordinary piece of it. A bridge built where boats and donkeys were once the only way in, built through wind that could flip a truck, rock that wants to slide, heat that never stays constant, and ground that never stops moving. And somehow, it's still standing. Would you feel comfortable crossing this bridge, knowing you're nearly 1,300 feet above the river? Let me know in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories about engineering, mega projects, and the breakthrough technologies shaping our future. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.